Mental health challenges can be understandably really scary for most parents, but that's primarily because there are so many unknowns that leave those parents feeling unprepared. Today I'll be sharing 5 simple truths about mental health that can leave any parent feeling like they can handle these challenges like a champ. The first thing parents should know about mental health issues is that the vast majority of mental health problems are temporary in nature. For many people in many situations, mental health problems will improve over time even without interventions. If you have a hard time believing that that's actually true, I would encourage you to get online and do a search for mental health spontaneous recovery. The numbers might actually surprise you. Research shows that people suffering from major depression, and as the name would suggest, that's the bad kind, for those individuals experiencing major depressive disorder, spontaneous recovery rates are up to 50%. That means people will get better naturally over time, even without any interventions. For anxiety, the numbers are a little bit lower, but 38% will still recover from those symptoms without interventions of any kind. Now, it's important that I point out here that with interventions, those numbers are dramatically improved. If a person were to participate in treatment or get medication for the symptoms of depression or anxiety, the recovery rates go through the roof. Bottom line, most people will get better and their symptoms will be short-lived. The takeaway message here is that people are resilient. They can be bent, folded, twisted, thrown down, crumpled up, and we find a way to soldier on. People are strong and people recover. Now again, the research has been clear that in order to get the best possible outcomes, interventions are the gold standard. Using medication or therapy or a combination of the two has shown that people will recover if they're given that opportunity. So we can take a deep breath and relax a little bit, knowing that chances are our loved one will improve over time. The second point that parents should know about mental health issues as it relates to their family is that being emotional is not always evidence of a problem. As a military psychologist, I was frequently called in to help commanders figure out what to do in difficult situations. Often, I would need to explain to that commander why I couldn't and shouldn't force their subordinates to participate in therapy. I was often asked to help fix an individual who had witnessed something ugly or traumatic or difficult, and then they were experiencing a lot of emotions as a result of those experiences. Whenever those requests came up, I would always explain to the commander that there is a technical term we use for individuals who witness something very, very difficult and then have a hard time sleeping, or a hard time focusing, or a hard time doing the things that they need to do. We call that normal. It's completely normal for an individual to experience a bad event and then have difficulty coping with that, having some disruption to their emotional status. But if we find that that individual is not recovering naturally over time, it's possible that an intervention would be beneficial. But immediately following some difficult situation, we would expect a person to experience emotional difficulties. Just because a person experiences emotional dysregulation and difficulties accomplishing what needs to be done following a difficult period or a difficult event, it doesn't mean that that person is broken or that person has to seek out treatment. If you know somebody who has gone through a particularly difficult event and you're worried about them, just pause and ask yourself, are they acting differently than you would expect pretty much anyone to act if they were put in that type of situation? If you find that that reaction is normal and would be expected for most people, then chances are that person will be fine just given a little bit of time and a little bit of support. Now, that doesn't mean that an individual can't seek out support from a professional like myself if they want to. That's really the key here. If an individual is struggling, it's always okay to ask for professional assistance, but it's very rare that a person actually needs to get that professional help. In a situation like that, where an individual has had a difficult time or a difficult experience, and you're concerned about them, it's perfectly appropriate to ask them if they would like to talk to a professional. If they don't, that's great. If they do, then of course we can support them in seeking out that help. A perfect example of this comes from my private practice experience. I had one individual come to me, and we'll call her Lucy. Lucy had been in a car accident and indicated that she needed to get help dealing with the trauma of that event. I met with her and through the clinical interview process found that she was experiencing a lot of the symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. She was having difficulty sleeping. She was having nightmares when she did fall asleep. She was finding that she was re-experiencing that event over and over in her thoughts. It was very disruptive to her in her life, and she was finding it difficult to focus in on her work or to find any joy or satisfaction in the things that she used to enjoy. But the most important piece of information I gathered was the timing of that accident. She reported that that accident had occurred just 1 week prior. At that point, I was able to let her know that she was having a very natural and normal experience as she recovered from a very traumatic experience. I was then able to explain that experiencing trauma is not the same thing as developing PTSD. Most people don't understand that it's very natural and normal for us as people to have a spike in our arousal when we have something difficult that occurs, like a significant car accident. If we were to take those same symptoms that Lucy was experiencing and make them 1 month later, then it's likely that she would have been diagnosed with PTSD. But because it is only 1 week after that accident, I let her know that she was having a normal reaction and no diagnosis was necessary. Now, I of course offered to provide emotional support as she went through the normal recovery process, and she took me up on that. I met with her a couple times, we talked about the accident, we talked about what she was experiencing, and I again reminded her that that was a normal reaction that we would expect anyone to have following such a difficult event. Within 2 to 3 weeks, Lucy was feeling much better. She was no longer having difficulty falling asleep at night. She was able to focus more in on her work, and no diagnosis was ever necessary. This happens more often than not when people have difficult situations. People recover because, as I said previously, people are resilient. Again, that doesn't mean that we don't offer the support, and if a person wants to have professional assistance as they go through that normal recovery process, we of course make that available to them. But we never want to lose sight of the fact that people will bounce back more often than not. The next thing that all parents should know about mental health is that people are so much more than their current emotional problems. You may be surprised how many people define themselves and others by their temporary mental health concerns. One of my primary jobs as a psychologist is to help individuals see more than just the emotions they're experiencing in the moment. Experiencing symptoms of depression or symptoms of anxiety does not make you a depressed person or an anxious person. It would be like saying getting a bad haircut makes you an ugly person. Hair grows back, and emotions change over time. If you doubt that, even a little bit, think back over your life. Try to think of a single emotion that you have felt that hasn't gone away at some point. Emotions are incredibly variable. In one moment we feel happy, and in the next moment we can be upset. How can something as variable as our feelings ever be a defining characteristic of who we are as people? If you experience an emotional or mental health problem, or if you know and you're concerned about somebody who does, remind yourself that a person is so much more than just the emotions that they're experiencing. Our emotional state is just a piece of who we are as individuals. It changes over time, and we are not defined by those emotions that we experience. Moving on to the next issue that all parents should know about mental health. Not all mental health problems are created equal. If I were to tell you that I was in a car accident, that could mean anything from a little fender bender in the parking lot to a 52-car pileup on the interstate. The same goes for mental health problems. For most people, getting diagnosed with depression is like that fender bender in the parking lot. You may be sore for a while, you may have to deal with some hassles and the fallout from that event, but chances are you're going to be just fine. You'll recover and you'll move forward. 52-car pileups, the kind that cause hospitalizations and fatalities, in reality and statistically, just don't happen all that often. Chances are, statistically speaking, that your mental health concerns, whether it's for you or for a member of your family, are more likely to be that fender bender than the 52-car pileup. And as I mentioned previously, chances are things will recover naturally over time. Professional interventions can be helpful in speeding the recovery process along, but they're not always necessary. Now, it's really important that I add a comment here. Please don't ever take lightly anybody making mention of potential harm to themselves. If somebody is indicating that they are having thoughts of self-harm or thoughts of suicide, we want to take those very seriously. Some evidence of that may be making comments about death or dying, or making comments or taking steps to harm yourself, such as cutting or burning. Situations like these are always treated as serious because they are. If you are witnessing any of that in yourself or with loved ones, please take steps immediately to get professional assistance. And just as all mental health problems are not created equal, all YouTube channels are not created equal. You just happen to have landed on the best mental health channel that's available on YouTube today. So I'll encourage you to take just a moment to like this video, to subscribe, and to hit that notification button so that you'll be notified when new content drops. And that brings us to our final point that every parent should know about mental health, and that's that it's okay to laugh. I take a very lighthearted approach to mental health treatment, and that's very different than taking mental health lightly. And I've noticed that this can be disconcerting to some individuals. One thing I can say is that this is only surprising to those who typically have not experienced a mental health concern themselves. Most people, when they're going through a dark time or having difficulty with their emotions, really appreciate the ability to laugh and find some humor in those situations. I've yet to meet a significantly depressed individual who doesn't truly enjoy the opportunity to have a break from those down feelings and to laugh a little bit. It's important to remember that mental health work is not mortuary work, and it's okay to approach it with some lightheartedness. Of course, every individual is unique, and the way we interact with a person should be based on their individual needs. But generally speaking, laughter is powerful medicine, and it's a fantastic reminder that life is to be enjoyed, even during the tough times. And that brings us to the 3-2-1 for this video. 3 things that I think are really important that you take out of this message. 2 minutes to think about how it's relevant to you, and then 1 thing that you're going to act on to help yourself and your family moving forward. First, parents need to know that although mental health problems can have a huge impact on the family, they're not to be feared. As long as we educate ourselves about how to approach those issues, the vast majority of cases will resolve over time with love and with support. Second, I want all parents to know that people are resilient, especially children. If you find your loved one is struggling with an emotional or mental health problem, chances are they're going to be able to bounce back from that. If you're there to be supportive and loving, chances are that person's going to be just fine. And finally, point number 3, even if you believe somebody you care about needs therapy, professional assistance is not always necessary. We talked about spontaneous recovery rates, and yes, therapy can help a person get better faster, but if they're not open to it, chances are it's not going to work anyway. What you can do is be loving and supportive. Encourage that person to seek out assistance, and if they're not willing to, accept that that's okay. Every individual has the right to choose what they do moving forward. Your child, your spouse, other loved ones are no different. Now that you have the information about what I believe are the most important points from today's video, I would love for you to take 2 minutes to think about it for yourself. Find someplace quiet where you can sit with your thoughts and think about what would be most beneficial to you in your life or to the lives of your family members. Once you've taken those 2 minutes to think about the topic that we've discussed today, then you need to pick that one thing that you're going to start practicing today and tell me what it is in the comments. As a reminder, we pick one thing because we're not going to improve on everything all at once. We go step by step, one thing at a time. And I want you to share it in the comments because that gives me the opportunity to see what everybody's working on, and it makes you more likely to actually follow through and do the work that's necessary. As always, I'll be going through those comments to see what everybody's working on, and then at random I'll select at least one person that I'll make outreach to find out, can I be of assistance? Is there anything that I can help with to move you forward and make sure that you're getting the most benefit out of this information? Until next time, you've got homework to get started on, so I'm going to leave you to it. Take care. Thank you for taking the time to watch today's video. If you have any thoughts or comments about the content that I've shared today, please use that comment function and let me know what's on your mind. It really helps me to make sure that I'm tailoring my message to the audience that really wants and needs to hear it. As always, I encourage you to take a look at our channel homepage to find those videos that are most relevant to issues that you're dealing with in your personal life or in the lives of your family members. Until next time, take care.